What is up and welcome back everyone. Today we'll be working on the Forester. Today we're going to hopefully be filling some of the chips with this Duplicolor paint pen. Fun fact, you can't get the Duplicolor paint pen for this car in Canada, unfortunately, or at least where I checked. So we're actually using some Chrysler black, but it's just black, so that's all good. This Forester is almost 17 years old at this point, so it definitely needs a couple spots. We're not going to be filling every spot because you pretty much got to respray to do it, especially on the front. So we're going to be filling some of the major paint chips today because what I want to do is I eventually want to polish it. So that's on our kind of our plan because I don't think this car has ever been polished. It's a little rough on the outside. There's a little bit of swirls, and when I say a little bit, the whole car is covered in swirls, as you guys can see. And to really get that polish, we're going to have to do a cut and a polish. So that means lots of work on the paint. So we want to make sure that all the spots where there's holes or chips that we're not pulling off more paint. So to do this, we're going to need a little more than just the paint pen itself, although this has pretty much all the paint, clear, and even a little sanding tip for us. But we're also going to need, just to make sure it's as good as it can be, is a couple pieces of 2000 grit sandpaper in some water and just a cloth to wipe stuff down. So it's not too much, pretty easy to pick up, and it helps out a lot, especially if you're in a salty place, just protecting those little chips. Then you got to select the chip you're working on. So I think we're going to be working on this guy right here, just because it's starting to rust, and that's never a good sign, and it's probably pretty old. You might have these on your hood. I don't know why. This is actually on my rear driver's side door. There's a few of them, but today we're going to just focus on this one so I can show you guys the process of perfecting it. Before you start doing anything to the paint chip, you're going to want to make sure that it's free from any contaminants. That includes rust. So just wipe it down. I've wiped it down just with water. If you're more worried about your paint, you can use just some quick detailer or something. And then you're going to want to take, the nice thing about these paint pens is they got this little end on them. It's kind of like almost like really hard chalk, and you want to just kind of like scrape inside of that, and that will remove as much rust as you can and remove any of the edges that are flaking already. You might make the paint chip a little bit bigger, but not to worry, that paint would probably have chipped off later on anyways. So you just want to make sure that it's as clean as possible. So let's go ahead, do that, and then start to fill the hole in with some paint. So since this car is a daily driver, most of these paint chips have pretty good rust forming on them, so I gotta make sure to get them nice and clean. And as you can see, it kind of opened up that a little bit more, but I mean, it's better than trying to apply paint on rust. And you might do what I just did, where you kind of scrape a little too much. You're most guaranteed to never get all the rust off, or all the rust color off, just because it's going to be on the edge and stuff. But the main thing is just getting it so it's loose and there's no like pieces of rust that once you paint over are going to fall off. As you can see, I accidentally scraped way too far. So that's just more of a thing in the clear, which we can fix when we use the clear end of this. And now the next step again is going to be just wiping it down with not a wet rag, but a damp rag, just to get any of those rust particles off. So there you go, there's no more rust-like fragments. And then you're gonna let that dry just till it's dry to the touch, and then it's time to fill. So filling these chips with these paint pens, actually you have a couple different options. And one of the best options I like is this little paint end. You can pull off the little scraper, and then you're able to dab it down. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The issue with doing that on the door is it might get too much and then run. It's really great if you're doing it on a hood, because then you can just tap it down and then it will fill it in perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to fill it using this, and if it doesn't fill, then I will have to pull out the brush, which just unscrews. This is a little sketchy. You got to be very careful of how much you're putting on, because you might cause runs, but I would definitely try the pen part first, and then if you have to use the brush, but just shake it, and then if the paint starts doesn't come out, you can kind of just dab it on a piece of paper, and then it should hopefully work. So we'll fill this up, and then we'll let that dry, and then we'll talk about what we have to do next. So now it's time to try to fill it. So as I said, I'm going to use the pen first and see what it does, and then we might have to brush it on, but we'll see. Okay, it's coming out. And I'm just going to kind of tap it and kind of fill in the spot. And then we're gonna leave this scratch, because that scratch didn't actually go to base coat. So we're just gonna kind of tap it, and as you can see, it filled it in pretty nicely. So now it's a waiting game to let this dry. And while this dries, you can kind of see if it's adding another layer is necessary. I think with this one it's pretty level, so we'll let it dry. Now with our paint dry, I just can go like run my finger along. It's pretty smooth. It actually leveled out really good. I'm pretty surprised. Now we're gonna do a step that you don't really have to do unless you're super picky like me and want to risk taking all the paint off. I'm gonna take some of our 2000 grit sandpaper and just slowly go over it to smoothen out the edges. By doing this, you're able to make more of a smooth transition to the old paint. This is the same thing we'll be doing when we put clear on it, but as you can see, it's just kind of very gently smoothing it out. You don't want to do this too much because then you'll go through your clear, but it is 2000, so there's not, like, you'd have to sand it quite a bit. This will dull the paint around it, but once you polish it, you can even polish it using some like scratch remover. It will be nice and shiny again. So yeah, as you can see, we're getting out a lot of the roughness. One good way to see if it's all smooth is you can go ahead, sand a little bit, wipe it off, and then check where it's dull, where it's shiny. You guys can't see this because I would need like a super macro lens here, but I'm dull or shiny in the center, dull on the corners, so you can see there's paint on the corners and there's not enough paint in the center. So I'm gonna sand until we get a smooth center. And just like that, you actually can't see the paint chip at all, even when it's dry. So some people leave it like this. It would be pretty good to leave it like this if it wasn't in super harsh conditions. But as you guys know, this is my overland rig, so it gets in some pretty interesting situations. So we should put some clear on it. So all you do is you gotta take your little paint pen here. I have a different one now because I was using the end. And use the bottom clear thing. And you wanna do a pretty large patch, bigger than your actual spot here, so that when you wet sand it again, you can level it all out. It's still gonna leave a little bit of a bubble, but like a little raised section, but when you smooth it out, it's hardly noticeable. So let's go ahead and do that now. And there we go, just gotta let it dry, and then we can go ahead and smoothen it out. Now it's really hard to see since it's now shiny, but the clear is now all dry, so I can rub my finger across it. Now we're gonna wet sand it again. You wanna be careful of places that you already have some sanding marks because you could go through the clear there. But we're gonna be very gentle with our 2000 and really just try to smoothen out the edges. Here you do want to make sure that you are getting that uniform kind of dullness when you wipe off the water. So we'll go ahead and do that, and then hopefully we have this paint chip all fixed up. Then I only got about 40 more to go. And once you're all sanded, it should be something like this. You can just barely see the place where I filled in the chip and the rest is all kind of dull. So after this, you can go ahead, you can kind of see that it's, there you go. You can just see kind of where I filled in that chip. If I was more picky, I could go sand it a little bit more, but I don't want to risk going through the clear. And that's probably what I would recommend, is just err on the safe side. Even though now it's nice and filled, and once we get that polished, it'll look great. And usually after this, I would go ahead and grab my buffer. You can even just grab a microfiber cloth and put some polish on it. Go ahead, polish it. This is 2000 grit, so even like a Meguiar's 215, I believe, or 115, whatever is their like fine, ultra fine polishing will actually remove this, because they rate that to 1200 grit. So this stuff is not that hard. You could even get some Scratch Doctor stuff and polish this out. But we're not going to be doing that today, because that's going to be done when we polish this whole car, because we got a lot of work to do before then. We got to fill about, I said 40, probably around 40 chips, so I'm going to be doing that for a while. But I thought I'd show you guys just the one, kind of show you guys my technique, because it seems to be working pretty well. I actually did that on the STI when I got a chip on the new fresh painted hood, and it's barely noticeable. So yeah, that's pretty good technique to just kind of fill it in and sand it a couple times and you're good to go. It's even nicer when you can actually find a paint pen that matches this. But that is gonna be it for today. Super short video, just showing you guys that, because we gotta get ready to polish this. We gotta get ready for some more adventures, but that is gonna be it. So as always, peace out and stay humble.